The following presentation will explain the process for installing a new Proteus automatic tank gauging system, otherwise known as a controller. There are several common items located on the front panel of the Proteus K, Proteus X, and Proteus B controllers. They include the 7-inch touchscreen display, power indicator, fault indicator, alarm indicator. Mounted only on the Proteus K and Proteus X is the thermal printer. The printer itself has a combination power indicator, paper advance button. All Proteus controllers are intrinsically safe and UL, CUL, CE, and ATEX approved. Thoroughly inspect all packaging before accepting receipt of the equipment. If you detect or suspect any damage or loss, you should notify the appropriate people and wait for authorization to open the package. The buyer assumes all risk for damage or loss of merchandise incurred during shipping and is responsible for filing and settling any claims. Prior to mounting, it is recommended to review the location of the controller, remote annunciators, and remote displays, as well as sensors, probes, pumps or valves, and Ethernet communications to determine the conduit paths needed to meet up with the appropriate knockout. Review the National Electrical Code and federal, state, and local codes applicable to this installation to ensure compliance. As safety is the first concern, it is important to read and understand all installation manuals. Always block off hazardous work areas where vehicles and pedestrians might enter. Ensure proper fire prevention measures to keep sparks, flames, and other sources of ignition away from the hazardous area. You should not apply power until all equipment has been installed and wiring is completed and inspected. Automatic tank gauging systems, remote annunciators, and displays are not to be installed in a hazardous location. Only sensors and probes may be installed in those hazardous areas. The controller is mounted on the wall, using the mounting flanges and the proper anchors and bolts for the wall type. Do not remove any of the internal components in order to mount the panel from the inside. Allow a 6-inch clearance around the controller for air circulation, conduit access and other mounted equipment. Avoid installing in corners or where swinging doors can bang into the controller. The controller can be mounted outdoors with the use of a NEMA 4X weatherproof enclosure. A heater and thermostat may be required. An important note: knockouts are used to separate the intrinsic and non-intrinsic compartments of the controller. Refer to the installation manual for the unit being installed for additional information. AC power cables must be installed in a separate isolated conduit. All RAS series annunciator cables must be combined in a separate isolated conduit. Alarm relay cables, dealing with AC circuits, must be combined in a separate isolated conduit. Also note, remote annunciators and alarm relay cables can be in combined conduits when dealing with low voltage communications. MTG probe and sensor cables may share a separate isolated conduit, only limited by the diameter of the conduit. At no time should any holes be drilled in any part of the controller housing. Follow all electrical guidelines when connecting the AC power. Ensure the line, neutral, and field ground are correctly terminated on the power connector. Power requirements for the controller is 100 to 240 volts AC on a circuit breaker rated at 15 amps. Warning: be certain not to install the power connector upside down. An earth ground is also required to be connected as it adds to the intrinsic safety of the controller. It must be a separate ground directly connected to the ground bar at the main service panel. This will also protect the unit from power surges. Other items that can help prevent power surges are UPSs and OMNTEC's SP2 surge protector. Let's take a quick look at some installation issues seen in the field. Here we see that the external 4 to 20 mA converter box, the X232-420, was mounted butted up to the controller's NEMA 4X enclosure. This did not allow for the door to open properly. This installer was trying to save on the number of conduits used. The AC power and the low voltage communication lines are mixed in one conduit. Probe and non-probe cables are mixed in one conduit, some of which just passed through the enclosure. This was another installer trying to save on the number of conduits used. The probe and low voltage cables were mixed in one conduit, and a hole was drilled in the intrinsic barrier to pass the one cable to the non-intrinsic side. Also noted was the lack of a separate earth ground. Here the technician thought the wireless receiver needed an earth ground. Running the wire under the metal barrier reduces the intrinsic safety. Sometimes we don't have all the correct items needed to make a proper communication connection. Here the wiring is a mix of splices, leaving the connection exposed to the elements. Now, let's look at probe installation. Based on the configuration of the Proteus controller, up to 40 MTG probes can be connected to the unit. OMNTEC probes provide tank inventory data by monitoring product, water, and temperature levels. Alarm points can be programmed for different levels in the tank. The bottom float monitors water. Single float probes are used when water monitoring is not necessary. The top float monitors product. It is important to note that the minimum clearance required for probe installation depends on the probe type, probe length, and the space above the tank. There are 3 types of MTG probes: rigid, flexible, and fixed bottom. Rigid probes are made with a stainless steel shaft. Flexible probes are made with a Kynar tube. Flexible probes can be installed where low ceiling clearance does not permit the use of rigid probes. It requires a minimum overhead clearance of 18 inches, as long as the Kynar tube is not bent to smaller than a 3-foot radius. Flexible probes can provide up to 70 feet of tank gauging. Fixed bottom probes are also made with a Kynar tube and can provide up to 70 feet of tank gauging. All MTG probe accuracy is to 1/100th of an inch, have an IP68 submersion rating, and are intrinsically safe. Please note, rigid probes may touch the bottom of the tank. The steps for installing an MTG-RS, rigid stainless steel, are as follows. Step 1. Insert the probe into the riser. Ensure the spacer brackets and floats are positioned properly. Step 2. Lower the probe into the tank. Do not allow the floats to drop to the bottom of the shaft, as this could damage the floats. Lower the probe slowly until the probe foot touches the bottom. Sudden impact could damage the probe and/or the tank. Step 3. Fit the wire into the riser cap. Allow a 4-inch minimum height clearance for tank deflection. Step 4. Tighten the cap and wire into the junction box. The installation of an MTG-FL top mount flex probe should be installed by 2 or more technicians. Care must be taken not to bend the tube to less than a 3-foot radius. Again, it's important to lower the probe slowly to prevent damage. Top mount flex probes are installed 1 to 4 inches off the bottom of the tank based on probe dimensions. They must not touch the bottom of the tank. Installing an MTG-FB fixed bottom flex probe. As with the top mount flex probe, the installation of a fixed bottom flex probe should be installed by 2 or more technicians. Care must be taken not to bend the tube to less than a 3-foot radius, and it's important to lower the probe slowly to prevent damage. A 6-inch opening is required for lowering the probe with the attached bottom weight. A spring assembly is installed to compensate for a floating roof movement. The fixed bottom probe can measure as little as 1 inch of water. The OWS, oil water separator, is a new enhancement to the Proteus features. It utilizes a rigid stainless steel probe. The main difference is the floats are mounted in opposing directions. This configuration measures the height of oil floating on top of water. The measurement can be as little as 0.1 inch. Information is gathered from the oil water separator tank for the correct programming of the controller. All extension cables used on the MTG probes must be OMNTEC EC2 or the Belden 8761. The Belden 87761 can be used for direct burial requirements. It is important to note that, if these cables are not used, unit performance can be compromised, and it would void unit warranty. The probe cable has 3 color-coded wires. White, which is the signal line. Black, which is the signal ground, and green, which is the shield. This connects to the extension cable's drain wire. All probe cables must not exceed 1,000 feet in length and must be installed in weatherproof junction boxes. Make wiring connections. Use the SK4 connector sealing kit for all splices. Instructions are provided with the kit. This completes the probe installation section. In addition to wired probes, OMNTEC also offers wireless systems. DataCheck is our patented ISBPW, intrinsically safe, battery-powered, wireless, tank monitoring system and operates on a line-of-sight principle. It provides high-accuracy inventory measurements, product level, water level, and temperature, and/or overfill protection. Wireless probes operate in a similar fashion to wired probes, but use a wireless transmitter, or data stick, to communicate with the controller. Level float sensors can be installed for overfill protection and also utilize a wireless transmitter, or fill check, to communicate with the controller. Wireless receivers are generally mounted outside of the building where the controller is located. If additional range is needed, or there is a limited line of sight, a repeater can be located between the transmitters and receiver. The receiver gets wired to either an XB416 DC or XB800 DC interface board. Multiple wireless boards can be installed in a Proteus X controller. Based on the configuration of the Proteus controller, up to 64 bright IBX sensors can be connected to a 4-wire bus. BX sensors can be connected to the controller either by individual runs or by daisy chaining the sensors. All BX sensors wind up being paralleled on the sensor bus. A maximum of 16 BX sensors can be connected to a single XB416 interface board bus network connector. BX sensors are self-identifying, providing the controller its type and serial number. BX optical sensors operate on the principle of light refraction, and with its convenient size and ability to detect liquids at any angle, these sensors are ideal for sumps, dispenser pans, containment areas, and the annular spaces of a double-wall steel tank. Under a dry condition, light from an LED bounces through a prism and is seen by an LED detector. The signal produced by the microprocessor sends a normal condition to the controller. Under a wet condition, the light from the LED is refracted away from the LED detector. The signal produced by the microprocessor sends an alarm condition to the controller. A conductivity electrode in a product distinguishing sensor determines if the liquid has conductivity and reports this as a water condition. The BXPDS and BXLS are general-purpose sensors designed to accommodate a variety of applications. They are ideal for sumps, dispensers, and containment areas. The BXPDWF and BXLWF sensors are used for the annular space of a double-wall fiberglass tank and are easily installed and removed from grade. The BXPDWS and BXLS sensors are used for the interstitial space of a double-wall steel tank and are also easily installed and removed from grade. The BXRES sensor is designed for double-walled brine-filled tanks and is made of non-metallic, corrosion-resistant material. An alarm is activated to signal changes in reservoir liquid levels beyond acceptable high or low limits. The BXL series sensors are designed to provide product-level alarms. These level sensors come in 2 standard sizes. Custom sizes can be ordered for different tank requirements. This completes the optical type sensors available for use in Proteus controllers. The BXTC1 temperature sensor is designed to monitor temperatures ranging from -50 to 150 degrees Celsius, with an accuracy of plus or minus 1 degree Celsius. Gas station and convenience store owners can now monitor the temperature in their refrigeration and freezer units. Owners can now be forewarned if the temperature of their refrigeration goes out of range, preventing inventory loss. The BXLF1 and BXLF2 are non-optical level float sensors. These sensors offer multiple options including float material, float sizes, and mounting options. The BXLF sensors require the use of a BXUT, or universal translator, to convert a dry contact switch closure to an electric signal that the Proteus controller can recognize. The BXUT can also be used to connect non-OMNTEC float sensors to our Proteus controller. The BXVS vapor sensor contains an adistor to sense the presence of hydrocarbon vapor in a dry environment, an alarm condition. The sensor can also be configured as a relay activator source. The BXVS sensor must be placed so that the rise and fall of the water level will not contact the sensor. All extension cables used on the BX sensors must be OMNTEC EC4 or Belden 9940 or any 22 gauge or better twisted pair, shielded cable equivalent. The sensor cable has 4 color-coded wires, plus a shield. Red, which is the power. Green, which is communication A. White, which is communication B. Black, which is the ground, and the bare wire, is the shield drain. All sensor cables must not exceed 2,000 feet in length and must be installed in weatherproof junction boxes. Make wiring connections and use the SK4 connector sealing kit for all splices. Instructions are provided with the kit. This completes the sensor installation section. If your installation is an upgrade from an OEL 8002 to a Proteus controller, make note of the following cables and their knockouts, as they will need to be rerouted. AC power, probes, sensors, pump controller relay wiring, and remote annunciators. Tag all cables to identify connections for probe tank numbers and sensor cables. Note the module name of the plug-in modules with the pin-to-wire color correlation layout, as there are some slight changes between the two systems. The old probes, sensors, and remote annunciators can be used with the new system. Reroute the AC power, probes, sensors, pump controller relay wiring, and remote annunciator cables to the appropriate knockouts for the model controller being installed. Reconnect the probes to the correct tank number. Reconnect all sensor cables to the sensor bus. Please note, you may need to daisy chain depending on the number of sensors. Remote annunciators will get connected to the MCU's J9 connector and possibly to an XBR-B8 relay module. Pump controller relays get connected to the XBR-B8. Also note, correct programming will need to be entered and verified so that each relay operates the correct pump. Now, let's take a look at some of the OMNTEC accessories that can be used with the Proteus controllers. Besides the RAS series remote annunciators, we have a 4 to 20 mA converter, the X232-420-SRC. Next we have our automation gateway, the C232-BAC, that converts Modbus to BACnet IP data format. We have a variety of remote displays, which includes the Minimi RD7CTS, Delivery Defender RD7CTS-DD, Minimi with printer RD7CTS-P, Delivery Defender Lite DDL, and the RD625 digital display. Refer to the individual manuals for installation and wiring. The Proteus controller will need to be programmed for the correct communication format. This completes the process for installing a new Proteus automatic tank gauging system.